Okay, everybody, this is The Hovering Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative take about the world around me. All right, questions, comments, concerns, show ideas, feedback is greatly important. Feel free to reach out to me, and I will link all of those sources for you to do so in this episode. Okay, so some of the audio platforms that I'm on are Spreaker, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Deezer, just to name a few. So I'm going to take a break from talking about American Lit, and I'm going to emphasize with this episode to be about music that is based off of books. I think it's very interesting. I think adaptations are interpretations about how books flow, and the subject matter of books is quite interesting when artists decide to take on that. And then how that translates in the music videos. And then on the other hand of that, in cinema, how that translates. But for today's, whenever you listen, but for this show's emphasis is going to focus on music. Here we go. I'm going to provide a source for you in this episode, but in the AI-generated response, I'm going to talk about it and then break it down, give my thoughts. And so before I give my thoughts on everything, I find it quite interesting when artists, particularly musical artists, when they decide to go into the aspects of literature, because that in itself proves a point in which my whole reasons for having this series about books, how books have a notion with really cultivating what, particularly at the time, stands, and how that translates to what culture shifts are going on and what people think about themselves and their aspects of humanity. All right, so here we go. It says, I could write a book. A show tune from the 1940 Rodgers and Hart musical Paul Joey, performed by various artists, include Dinah Wash. Don't Stand So Close to Me by The Police, referencing Humbert from the Lolitas. That book. We Are the World. While not directly based on a book, it was inspired by a dystopian novel, 1984, by George Orwell. The Battle of Evermore, Led Zeppelin's song that refers to characters from the themes of Lord of the Rings. 1984 by David Bowie, inspired by, again, George Orwell's dystopian novel of the same name. Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush. This was inspired by Emily Bronte's novel of the same name. Dragon King's Dying Queen by The Used. This was inspired by the book Brave New World. Things Fall Apart by The Roots. This was inspired by the novel of the same name. So, The Great Migration by S.J. Tucker was inspired by this song. And forgive me for the pronunciation. Velopete, something of that nature. And to end, We Are Going to Be Friends by the White Stripes, which was inspired by the children's book Alice in Wonderland, which in itself was, this song was in the movie Napoleon Dynamite, and that it was out before then, but that's being showcased in Napoleon Dynamite is what gave it its mass appeal, and everybody started to take notice of it. And that's the whole reason why music and film and everything else in between go so well together, because they both amplify attention to detail to how they complement each other. All right, so here are my thoughts about what I just read here. So, emphasis with Don't Stand So Close to Me. Emphasis by... let me go back. Emphasis on these two. Don't Stand So Close to Me, and We're Going to Be Friends. And then, I'm going to talk about all the other things and give my perspective. So, Police, when they started out with their careers, specifically with Sting, and him being the front man of the Police, and then when he went off to his solo career, the Police was all about, for the most part, going counterculture here. And so to surface up a book like Lolita here, it's interesting to say the least here. So what do I mean by interesting to say the least? So it's a reason why that book was banned and why people were in uproar about that book, because it tried to normalize the aspects of being pretty much having unhealthy attraction towards very, very young girl, a very young girl, and how that in itself says a lot about the aspects of where do we cross the line and where are we going with the aspects of talking about subject matters like that. And the Police, they didn't shy away from talking about very uncomfortable subject matters to where you're like, you really want to go there. So, for instance, it's quite interesting how Roxanne and then Every Breath You Take got Matt in the aspects, again, of pop culture here. And then, so I had said this before, in an episode, in a podcast or episode earlier, about the aspects of people not really paying attention to the lyrics. Now that's a whole different that's more apropos to Every Breath You Take. But with Roxanne, this is more with the aspects of, again, talking about a subject matter that is very, very, very serious and very, just very gritty and real, but presented in a way that's, somewhat approachable for people to pay attention to. And I think they were really good about that. And I don't know, it's just really weird that specifically with rock stars, they're notorious with wrapping themselves up to, on the other hand of that, wrapping themselves up to being associated with debauchery and being associated with underage themes and normalizing that. What the hell is that all about? It's something to think about too. And that's something to go along and link itself to the aspects of what is valuable, what people think about youth and culture and our society, and how that's, and then when people flip it on its butt, what does that say too about the aspects of youth and culture, and how to, put your line in the sand about morality and things of that nature. All right, so moving on to the song "Every Breath You Take." See, the song, on the surface, people even have accredited to this to be a great love song, but when in actuality, it's not. It's about the stripping and the control that not wanting to let someone go, and in the aspects of being paranoid of losing someone. Well, losing someone in the sense of a relationship going bad. And then, the aspects of not paying attention to lyrics, how that takes on a whole new meaning of the subject matter. And it's quite interesting how when musical artists decide to delve in the realm of literature, how presenting that and hoping that the audience understands the references, how then again that reprises the aspects of what is the hidden meaning and the interpretation of these books, and what do people really what do people think about the interpretations of books and how prevalent these types of books are in our society here. All right, so going on to We Are Going to Be Friends, and then I'm going to talk about, touch on the other aspects of these books. So, Napoleon Dynamite, man, I remember when that came out, that was, it was like a slow burn. And if y'all know what I'm talking about, the book that I'm referring to, kudos to you. I'm halfway referring to. So, and it's quite interesting because the directors, interesting enough with that, they try to depict themselves as if this movie was this cutting-edge indie film, when actually, is it really? It's one of those things you got to really see pay attention to the money trail with that, and how, first MTV picked it up, and then I think Fox picked it up, and it makes you wonder, is it so independent? But I don't know, it's something with that says a lot to the aspect of the commercialism of indie, of considering yourself indie, or considering a film indie when it actually isn't. And so a song like We Are Going to Be Friends, going to being a part of the interpretation of Alice in Wonderland, you can hear the innocent and the flow of how everything's stripped down to a folk early 60s folk kind of slow paced style, and the acoustic accompaniment of the guitar really emphasizes that, and how it's telling a story, and you're going on this journey and you're trying to understand what is the plight of these two young people. It goes do 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 do. I can tell that we are gonna be friends. Do do. And I can tell that we are gonna be friends. And then it goes back and forth, slow pace, back and forth, slow pace, and you start to seep in and really listen and get the feeling that, okay, what is this song actually about? And so it's quite interesting that they chose to use that song as the intro for Napoleon Dynamite, because that sets up the premise of, again, the subject matter of Napoleon Dynamite. This movie is about supposed to be a coming of age movie about these young people and trying to figure something out. And so on the surface level, that is what Alice in Wonderland is all about. This young girl trying to figure her way through life and through the challenges and of this fantastical world, and then in most part how that relates to the aspects of the real world and fantasy. And then it's quite interesting enough too, again, with these aspects of the reality of the situation in the real life, of the subject matter is quite taboo with the author, how his aspects with youth and culture was, if you look at this outside looking in, it's like, he raised an eyebrow at it. But, and then again, at the same time, when it's really something, it's just a testament to how people think and feel and see things. Because at that time, when Alice in Wonderland was written, and the different structures and moralities of that time was quite different than what is being presented, what is being seen today. And some people are trying to normalize the aspects of being attracted to, minor people, when it's like, what kind of society do we want to lead when we don't, nip that crap in the bud, rein it in and say, you need to be ostracized for that. Again, these things here, they really, really prove the point of the aspects of how powerful literature is in making commentary about the aspects of how people and humanity coexist together here. All right, Kate Bush, Wuthering Heights. Now, Emily Bronte, Jane Austen, all these types, they were really good about the aspects of centering around the subject matter of class, of love, of marriage and want and need, and the place of the aspects of what a woman should think and her decisions of suitors, for the most part, of marriage and the relationship of that. And so many different things to you. It makes sense how that relates to the aspects of budding feminism, so to speak, but in a way that's more concrete, in a way that's more not so off the fringe, to where it's more relatable to a mass appeal, instead of where feminism, it just wants to rip your face off and make you pay attention. It's just not ground in reality or, things of that nature. And so Kate Bush, taking on this aspects of Wuthering Heights, she was really great about taking stuff to the next level, specifically in an artistic point of view. And her work from start to finish was very prevalent in that. I'm a huge fan of Kate Bush. I mean, she in herself helped to reshape the aspect of female vocal range and length and range and length, and the aspects of being very feminine but at the same time powerful, at the same time merging those two things together to where it doesn't seem like it's an insult because you being very feminine, and then she's not trying to play into a role where, my femininity is obstructing me from being the person that I want to be. And I think that her talking about the subject matter of Wuthering Heights is very apropos to her image, because Wuthering Heights is very, flowery and very romantic, on the surface level. But at the same time, there's a lot of serious subject matter. Well, for the most part here, it was not serious like a, that means a whole different thing in certain subject matter where, when you get the aspects of violence and destruction. But what the aspects of seriousness of is not there's reality in the aspects of romance and love. These women specifically want these sort of men that are deemed not the best for them, but but they're trying to figure out their way out with wanting the right kind of suitor that their family says is best for them, and what their town says is best for them, and their society says is best for them, trying to figure their way out about all these things. And the aspects of males and females, taking care of one another and sorting, and then the aspects of this idea of a man being stoic and not being very, and not that there's supposed to be honor in that, but at the same time showing the sensitive side. There's just so many different ever-changing things. And then Kate Bush really, it really is in her realm, because mostly all the subject matter that she has talked about is centering around the aspects of male and female relationships and how that evolves or fades away throughout time. And I think that's mainly the point with Emily Bronte's work. All right, so 1984, and it's quite interesting that We Are the World was based on the George Orwell 1984. That's very crazy when you think about that, but it makes it kind of is weird, but it makes sense sort of at the same time, because when you think about the book 1984, it was very cutting edge to the aspects. It was seen as, this could possibly happen here if we don't pay close attention to what society is shifting, especially within the governmental tier of things, of the checks and balances of how everything flows in government here. And then, when you get into the 1980s, everything was vastly changing, and it was a lot of rudimentary progress, but at the same time, a lot of mass destruction, to where, musicians felt the need to take notice of it as best as they could. Now, some people, critics of We Are the World, is that it was a very selfish notion, and that they don't really, it was just putting on airs. They don't really care about the aspects of the plight of humanity. But at the same time, it's one of those things, you take it with a grain of salt. I mean, they are musicians. They're not world leaders here. And then even within the aspects of world leaders, there's, you gotta turn your eye around at some of these world leaders that we have. And then there have been world leaders of the past, and say, ooh, I don't know. Especially when you get in the aspects of militant leaders and the aspects of the destruction of imperialism and everything else with that. Start to wonder. But it's one of those things, it's like that saying goes, there's good intention there's good intentions, most everything starts with good intentions, But you just take it for what it is, Just get over yourself. Don't be. It's a song, But at the same time, there is a point where these musicians can be overly pretentious, and they think they're trying to help, but they should try and let the people who can actually help, you know. And then David Bowie emphasizing the aspects of 1984 in that song. It just encapsulates, again, these two songs encapsulate, again, the soul and the essence of what was going on in the 80s, about how technology and culture can merge together in a way to where it can be soulless. And that's something. And then all the other aspects of Led Zeppelin and all of that, and the aspects of the Roots and the Used, and all of these different artists talking about, or specifically talking about the aspects of other worlds and the aspects of the, emphasizing the importance of really connecting and to the hierarchy of the mystique and the aspects of lore like that, and trying to emphasize the mystical side of what it presents, and how simple it can be, but at the same time complex, like Lord of the Rings, and the aspects of those things, of the class and society and the destruction and everything else within that, and how it can be presented in a way that's mainstream, that's relatable to people, whether you realize that or not. All right, so with all that said, I am going to go in and talk about a little bit more about some 21 songs by Bustle that every bookworm will love. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go talk about a few of them. Let me see. Sylvia Plath by Ryan Adams. So this is Ode to the Ironic Poet. Author is simply beautiful. So Sylvia Plath, she emphasized the aspect, again, I don't think it's fair to say, but she, in her own realm, with the people, Emily Dickinson sort of mentality, with the aspects of talking about things from a female perspective, but in that aspects that's unapologetic, so to speak. Here, it's quite interesting. So Every Day I Write the Book by Elvis Costello. So it's an intended book metaphor, and it is the aspects of that, of these extended book metaphor, you get in the essence of talking about the subject matter, again, with class and the aspects of love and romance, and normal and making it, humanizing the relationship between Diana and Charles at the time, the late Princess Diana and, Charles of the royalty of Charles there. I don't know, it's slipping my mind their last names, but that is what that subject matter is about mostly. So The Book of You by Belle and Sebastian, another by Belle and Sebastian. So Wuthering Heights, and then go with, and by I Could Write the Book. And this classic jazz tune was originally from the 1940 musical Pat Joey. And that's quite interesting, because a lot of, out of the 40s, specifically with the jazz, and we get in the Harlem Renaissance, there was a new emphasis of class sophistication with entertainment, with the entertainment of jazz, and bringing people together from different backgrounds, whether it be racial backgrounds or, simply backgrounds from middle class, upper middle class, poor, whatever. It really united people. The music of jazz did. All right, so and then Sherlock Holmes by Sparks. So Sherlock Holmes is quite interesting. This too, and I'm gonna give my interpretation about this with this song. So in itself, with I can understand the lore within that, how a lot of people really relate to the aspects of mystery and intrigue, and Sherlock Holmes really was witty and smart and intelligent in the way everything was presented, but at the same time, it has gained so much mass appeal and continues to gain so much mass appeal because it doesn't talk down to anyone. The way everything is written, you can really, seep yourself into it and relate to it. All right, so Sonnet 43 by Rufus Wainwright. So, Darling Rufus Wainwright recorded haunting musical interpretations of Shakespeare's Sonnets 43 and Sonnet 20 and Sonnet 43 and Sonnet 20 and Sonnet 20 again. So, like everything Wainwright does, they're gratefully and strange in a wonderful way. So, I'm going to end on this. And then I'm gonna talk about the book I read by Talking Heads. And merge those two together here. So, William Shakespeare in itself. Now, a lot of the subject matter of William Shakespeare is, very odd and out there. But again, he was at the cusp of the subject matters with the cusp of really, really formatting the aspects of modernizing the society in which he lived around them and really taking these subject matters to a new height, to where, it's makes a whole lot of sense why his work keeps getting republished, rephrased, and rethought, re-emphasized, studied, because a lot of what he's talking about really connects to the aspects of how people think about themselves and the plight of their humanity. Well, now I don't want to keep saying humanity, but the plight within themselves here. Those struggles, those internal struggles with morality, and those aspects of within morality, we get the aspects of discovering who you are, and the aspects of power and control and everything else. It's quite interesting. And then Talking Heads in itself, they were very innovative band, specifically when we talk about new wave. New wave is one of those catch-all terms for not really knowing where to place these musical artists. But anyway, so Talking Heads, they really were experimental in the way that they would sing and present their music. And so it was quite interesting enough how they understood the importance of literature. And if I'm not mistaken, the lead frontman and then most of the people in that band were very well versed when it comes with the aspects of literature and different aspects of art and that nature. So their interpretations about the impact of literature makes a whole lot of sense for them to make more emphasis in how if you pay attention to what a writer is saying and how the writer is emphasizing things, it can help you to interpret the way people converse themselves with language. All right, so this reaches the end. I'd like to know all of your thoughts. Feel free to reach out to me, and those things will be provided for you. All right, this is the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye-bye for now.